So, can anybody hear me? Okay, how's everybody doing today? How's my sound? I Had to switch my setup around and bring in the desktop computer to stream because the laptop kept dying. But today we're going to learn how to do something special with the actual display. A lot of people have TFTs and they've been asking how to make special bitmaps. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. It's kind of simple, but we're going to start with BTT Tech's website and see how well it comes out. So there's something going on where they give directions. I looked at them, tried them, realized that most people don't have that software. So I'm going to show you in a second the actual browser. I just have to get it set here. So we're going to go over to our friend Google for a second, and I'll show you where to find the information first, and then we'll go from there. So first thing that we want to do is we want to say BTT TFT for our display, and then GitHub. This will bring us to where we need to be so we can look up the actual type of display. And so what we have here is the actual display. So I'm going to download the code real quick in a zip. And while that's downloading, let's see if we can find the directions here. So they have something called README. I'm not sure how well that's going to help, but let's see what we get. So for README, it says English, so I'll pick that. Then it says how to add a new language, how to customize icon, and then how to customize fonts. So I'm going to start with icons just to see what's in here. And so it talks about the size of the pixel display. So that probably is going to be helpful if we want to change the display. And so there's certain rules. So for the TFT 35, it's 480 by 320 pixels. We're going to need to remember that. And then for the TFT 35, it says 95 by 95. And then, of course, it has the other types down below. So now that we know that, I'm going to actually go over to the folder for the zip file, and we'll see if we can unzip it. So let me go over to downloads and see if it's there. Apparently I don't see it, so that's going to be fun. Give me a second here. I may not have actually downloaded it correctly, so I'm going to go back here and download the zip. I'm going to save the file, and let's see what happens. There it goes. So it's downloading as we speak. I think it's actually already downloaded, so I'm going to go over to that screen so you can see what I'm doing. So inside this folder, you can see over here that it's BTT Tech touchscreen firmware. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to extract all, and then I'm going to say extract. So this may take a few moments. I'll peek in the chat. Yeah, for ramps, this process might be similar for the TFT displays. So that might need to be modified slightly different. I don't know what the rules are for that one, particularly at the moment, until I get one in front of me, and I think I have one someplace, but I might not have it at my fingertips, so I might have to search for that. But first I'll walk through this, and then we'll see if I can find the other one. So the download's almost complete. It's going to pop a folder in a moment. And that folder is going to be our BTT Tech touchscreen firmware. So I'm going to open that up. And we need to generate an actual file for this, or folder. So I'm actually going to drop in the SD card. So give me a second to put that together. This is a new setup, so it's going to take me a second to get everything just right. So I just put in the drive, and I'm actually going to format it so I can show you the correct process. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to format, and then I'm going to say format as FAT32 and do a quick format. So now that that's complete, I'm going to close out of that. I'm going to copy this part to our drive. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to send to, and I'm going to send it to our USB drive. The other thing that we want to send is probably going to be in that file, so we'll see what we get, and then we'll go from there. The BTT DIP version 1.0 MMU2 board by any chance? I may do a video on it. I may even have one here. I'd have to search. Give me a second to look and see if I have one in the drawer. So looking at the boards that I have here, I have an SKR Mini and a Mini. I thought I had one of these boards on hand, but I don't know. I'll have to search for it in a couple minutes. Let me finish this part up, and then we'll go through and see what I can find for different things. So to set this up, we're going to go to our USB drive, or excuse me, our SD drive. I'm going to click over here, and we're going to pick a theme, and we're just going to do a general load to start. So the first thing that we need to do is actually get the right firmware. So here's the actual firmware for the LED or TFT that we're working with. So I'm going to copy this, go to the root of the drive, paste it. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to pick up the config and copy that and bring it to the root of the drive. I'm just showing this so that everybody knows how to do this and it's complete. Then I'm going to pick a theme. So in this case, I'm going to do unified menu, and I'm going to do TFT 35 and put that on the root. And then one last thing is the actual language. So we're going to go in here and go into the language pack, and I'm going to click on English because apparently that's the only one I'm fluent in at the moment. So I'm going to paste that right here. So now we have all the 4 things we need to load our drive. So we're going to do a load, but first we're going to find an actual image. So per their directions, they said to use Photoshop and then adjust the image. What we're going to do is we're going to cheat and use a software that everyone has on their Windows system, being MS Paint. So I'm going to click first over here so I can see the bitmaps and see if I can change the display so you can see this different. Of course, right now I'm trying to find it. There we go. So these are all the images that are currently on here. Obviously, I'm not going to do every single image, but I'm going to do a couple so that you can see. Like the Big Tree Tech, as you can see, is 26.7 kilobytes. So what we're going to do is first check properties on it. And as you can see, it gives us very little information here except for what we derived from what they said. But over here, we can see that this one is actually 95 by 95. So this might not be the image we want to change. We want to actually change the logo. So I'm going to click on the logo, check the properties, and we'll look at the details as well. As you can see, it's 24-bit, and it's 480 by 320. So we know what the values are now. So we're going to start with a bitmap. So I'm going to pull up MS Paint. And I'll put it on a screen where you can actually see it. And inside MS Paint, I'm going to browse to a file and open it. Now I don't have a lot of great files to browse to, so I'm just going to pick one at random. And obviously it's too large right now, so we're going to resize it. And what was that, 480 or 420? Let me check real quick here. We're going to go back to this folder. We're going to right click, go to properties, then details. So 480 by 320. We're going to go back to paint. We're going to say pixels, maintain aspect ratio. We're going to uncheck. And I think it's 420 by 320. And then say OK. And now we have the image. So we're going to call this boot screen. So let's see if we can, or logo. Let me see if I can put text on here. It's been a while since I've used MS Paint. I know they've changed it around a little. So we'll say logo. Apparently that's hard to read. So we're going to do it in red. So that at least allows us to see what we're working with. Now to save it, we're going to go to save, save as, and inside here, we're going to navigate to our SD drive. We're going to go into the folder for bitmaps, and we're going to call it logo 2. And then for saving, we're going to do it as 24-bit. And then we're going to click save. Now we're going to go back to that folder just so we can see if it's there. And at the moment, I don't see it in the right place. So I may have saved it in the wrong place, which is highly possible. So I'm going to type logo. I don't see it. So I think what I did is I saved it in the other folder, but let's refresh one more time and see if it's here. So there it is. So I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm just going to compare the file sizes. They look to be exactly the same for the size in kilobytes. So I'm going to delete this one. And I'm going to rename this one and take out the number 2. So we've done that. Now let's try something else, like maybe settings. Let's see where that is. So I know there's a settings right here. So we're going to change that one as well. So I'm going to go back to Paint. I'm going to start a new file. Then I'm going to browse or open. And let's see what we can find here. We got a JPEG. Let's do a board. And then say open. Now this is obviously too large. But we know this one is going to be 95 by 95. And let's see what happens. So obviously I didn't pick pixels. So 95 by 95. It's not maintaining, so, or it shouldn't maintain. So I'm going to do it again. So there we go. We actually have the image now. So this one we're just going to rename settings. We're not going to put any text in there. Maybe a big A. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, part of an S. We'll do it in yellow. Or we'll hopefully do it in yellow. There we go. We'll just try that one more time. So that's going to be our image. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to navigate back to the USB drive, TFT folder, bitmaps. I'm going to type, I believe, settings. And I'm going to change it to 24-bit. So let's double check to see if it's in here as settings. So we have settings right here. We'll do settings 2 just to be safe, just to make sure it gets there. And save that. Now we'll go back to that folder and we'll see if it actually exists. I might have to go out and back in. Okay. And then I'm going to hit S on the keyboard and hopefully we'll see it, which we do. So I'm going to delete this settings right here and say yes. Then I'm going to take out the 2. And we're all set with that. Whoop. So we've changed 2 things. One is the actual logo, and the other one is settings. So now we're going to load it. So I'm going to pop the drive out and see what happens. So I'm going to go over to the workbench here so you can see what I'm doing. On the workbench, I'm working on a Big Tree Tech GTR board. I'm not sure if I have this set right. I'll figure that out in 2 seconds, but USB might be the other set of pins. One quick way to check is to apply power to it. So it doesn't look like it's working. So I'm going to try this real quick. So now it is working. So I'm going to disconnect that for a moment. We're going to connect the TFT cable. And if you haven't already heard me say it, that's the reset. And that's the reset for pin. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to line up the other ones and plug it in. Then I'm going to plug in the reset pin. And then on the back of here, we're going to find the actual configuration. Normally I screwed this up, so that should be it. So let's see if this actually powers up. So that looks like it works. So the next step is to take the actual SD card and place it in the back. So this will load our firmware for us. So as you can see, it's loading firmware like we did before. And I'll look at the comments in 2 seconds here. For Marlin, I've actually never used Clipper, so I can't really speak to it. But I'm guessing that it's similar to other host softwares. But I'd have to do research on Clipper before I can answer any questions on it. I just don't want to look too foolish when I do this. So while that's loading, I'm going to grab one of my hex wrenches in case it asks me to touch the screen, which it probably won't. And we'll see what we get. I don't know if the screen is too reflective right now, so I'm going to try and tilt it a little so you can see it. Right now I'm waiting on Amazon to replace one of the monitors they sent me, so I'm having a little bit of trouble seeing the actual display because of the crack. But hopefully tomorrow that'll be all sorted out. So now it's updating logos. As you can see, one of the logos we just loaded popped by for a second. And now it's loading all the other ones. And when it gets to settings, maybe we'll see that one as well. Might take a second because I don't know how many there are off the top of my head. I think it's like 100 and something. It may not be going in alphabetized order. Yeah, so I think it's jumping around a bit. So it's almost done. Of course, it's a couple more than I thought. So there we go. Now it's setting up the language. And there's our first logo. So no longer does it say that it's Big Tree Tech. And then for settings, we'll probably have to go into menu. And there's our settings. So that's how you actually change your bitmaps. All you have to do is find the size and remember to save it as 24-bit. So does anybody have any questions on that? Comments? So let's see if I can do some different types of board loading. I haven't done the Big Tree Dip version 1.0. So let me see first if I actually own one here. So I'm going to check and see what I have. Might take a second. But if you have any questions, let me know. Sorry about the camera. I'm still working on making sure it doesn't shut down 30 minutes into talking. So right now what I'm doing is just seeing if I actually own one. Because I'm not sure if I actually ordered one of these, but it looks like I have an E3 dip someplace. So what I'm going to have to do is actually search for it. I actually probably have 2 of them. So let me see what you were asking about. You were asking about the Big Tree Tech dip, or version 1 dip. So looks like I have an SKR Mini. I know I have a dip someplace in here. Actually, I have one. It's actually still in its package. So let's see if we can figure out how to load this. I'm gonna have to move the actual printer board out of the way in a second. So I'm gonna look up the actual web page for Big Tree Tech real quick for you. So we'll transition over there. And on this website, if you haven't already figured it out, you can click on Big Tree Tech. This brings you to the root. And then there are repositories. This might be relevant, we'll have to see. So what I'm looking for is the dip. And there it is. The reason I do this is actually to check the hardware. And the hardware on here will actually give information as to where the pins are and other such things. So as soon as I get this board out of the way, I'll put a new one in the way for the E3 dip. So almost cleaned up here. Just have to find a place to put things. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the camera so you can see what I'm doing. So here's the E3 dip. It's in a fresh package. Unfortunately, I gotta open it, so I gotta get some scissors. So I'm not sure how well this is gonna go. We're gonna find out together. If you see smoke, that means I screwed up. But let me prepare the board here real quick. I like to keep it in one place, so I have to do a special treatment on the back of it. So that's in the center of my screen. I'll zoom in. And maybe I can see the actual chip on it, but I probably can't, but we can check that. So it's got an ARM processor, as you can see right here, right in the center of the screen. Let me get a little bit closer. So I can't make out very much from the actual video here myself, but maybe you can. But I'm gonna zoom back out, and I'm gonna go over to the web page so we can see what we got for information. So on the web page, what I see is hardware. I'm gonna click on that, and first thing I'm looking for is pinouts. The next thing I would be looking for would be the actual manual. So as you can see, it's telling us where everything is. So you got your X motor, your Y motor, your Z motor, your EM motor, which is your extruder motor. And then it says where the power is. You can do 12 or 24 volts. It's got pins for loading. These are SWD, so you can load your software through those. Then it shows the power for your out power, I believe, your bed. So this would be your extruder, this would be your bed, or this might be your power for the board. I might be misreading what it means for power here, but I'll have to actually look at the board. But I believe that's for your hot end, but I'm not super sure. It looks like that might be your bed. But I can look at the board and figure that out or decipher it. For now, we're not actually going to apply power to it because I don't want to screw up the board just getting it. But it says HB here and hot end here. So it may have a different power source, or I don't know why they did that, but it doesn't make a lot of sense without the manual. Then we know where our fan is for fan 0. Fan 0 has an actual pin associated with it. So that means that we can control that fan with software. Then the other one says 12 or 24 volts in ground. So we know that this right here is direct power for the fan of either 12 or 24 volts based on our input voltage. Then we have our end stop E0, which makes almost no sense to me, but that's okay. I don't know exactly what that means because I'm looking for something else. But I've never seen that before. And then you have your probe, which is probably for something like BL Touch. But then you have your X end stop, your Y end stop, your Z end stop. And then you have your thermistors over here that tell you how to detect heat for both your heat bed. So this, I think, means thermistor heat bed, and TH0 means your hot end thermistor. Pardon me. Then over here we have our TFT display. And then we have an expansion set of pins. These are mostly signal pins with 1 voltage and 1 ground. And then we have SPI pins. And then it looks like USB pins over here. And a mini SD, which I don't know why that would be there. Then we have our actual pin numbers for our stepper motors. And then we have our motor SPI. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm guessing that's, let's see, something open. It has to do with a communication protocol, the MOSI. I can't remember the abbreviation off the top of my head right now, but it's like master out, slave in, and this one's master in, slave out, I think. But that's your clock for a pin. So that's all I know from just reading this. Obviously, it's not a lot of information. So let's see if we can actually find the actual manual, because that would be helpful. So it says manual here, so maybe I should read that. I like to read the manual just so I don't damage the board. As you can see, they also have a fuse. And then we can tell that they have pins for advanced steppers here for TMC. And they have the actual jumpers for the pins. So we need to know what the jumper settings are if we were to decide to use a motor. So let me check on the chat just so I don't go out too far off on a tangent without watching what your questions are. So the Big Tree Tech E3 Mini version 2. Someone wants to know if it's pre-installed for TMC 2209, which run UART. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd actually have to go through the manual and see what's going on. Obviously, I'm not 100% familiar with everything, but obviously I know maybe a couple things. So let's see. The advantage to this board over the ramps, the advantage would be that it's 32-bit. And you can also, a lot of the motherboard is silk screened or wired in a way that you can use advanced steppers natively, so you don't have to run jumper wires. The disadvantage of this board compared to the ramps is that it probably has less pins that you can work with, but you can find ways to expand the pins in other ways. Yeah, this board might be, someone's asking if they can use it on an Ender. It looks like the form factor is correct for an Ender, so you could probably drop that in as a replacement. I personally, unfortunately, want to have a second extruder on my Ender, so I use a board that has actual 5-stepper motors. So let me see where I am, because I'm talking probably between two places in the view, so I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So on this board, as you can see, you have steppers for only 4 steppers. That's a disadvantage to the ramps, but it also fits into an Ender, so you get the 32-bit capabilities, so that your print computations are easier to do, meaning that you have more bits. A lot of this board obviously is laid out specifically for the Ender, so that you can use TMC type steppers, so you can have a quieter printer. Let me see what else I have for questions here. The SKR boards probably will run Clipper. Don't quote me on that because I don't know Clipper, but they will run Marlin natively. Any board, generally, if they figure out how to program it and set up the hardware abstraction layer correctly, they can load any firmware on it, but obviously my knowledge of Clipper is next to 0. Yeah, the old ramps is 8-bit. They have newer ones where you can use other boards that bring it up to 32-bit. You can't just plug in a 32-bit board. One of the things that goes on with that is that the board has a different power setting, because it's, I think, 12 volts natively on the old ramps. On the newer ramps, like the ramps 1.6, you can run a 32-bit board for your Adreno drop-in replacement. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is actually go back to the manual so that I actually can understand what we're going to do here, because I actually want to see if I can load firmware on it without actually doing it once before. And you might get to see me screw up, but we'll see what happens. So it tells you what the actual chipset is up here. Then down here it says the size of the board, the power requirements. It shows you the layout of the size of the board over here. And then of course it explains all the functionality. So I was right, this was input power, and this is actually output power. I'm a little freaked out as to why they have output power, because they normally have it as your hot end in your heat bed. So this is something new to me. But that's why I was confused. It didn't make logical sense from other designs I had seen. So down here it says how to connect it to your computer. You may have to load actual firmware or excuse me, drivers on your computer to set it up. And they're giving a location for it right here. I might have these natively. If not, we can see if I can figure that out. Then they talk about the different types of steppers. So this is actually the A4988, gives you 1/16 of a step. I'm guessing that it also does the TMC, or excuse me, does the DRV 8825. But obviously I don't know if it's native. It probably is. And then it talks about other drivers and where the actual jumper positions are. Obviously their pictures are horrible because you can see the pins here, but the actual picture is good enough to know where your jumpers go. So there's the actual TMC's jumper right here. Then it talks about the BL Touch, talks about a UPS power backup. Here's the actual automatic shutdown after print. So this is a relay that turns off your power supply probably, or your power switch. And then it talks about firmware, and that's it. So let's go see how we can set this up here. So what I'm gonna first do is go to the desktop so you can see on the workbench. And the first thing that we're gonna have a problem with is I don't have the right connector. So that's gonna be a problem. So in order to power this board, I got two options. I can actually use the actual, hang on, let me change the light. I can actually use the actual power directly to it. So that's what we're gonna do, and I'll actually use a TF drive for now because I don't have the connector. But let me go see if I've got it in the other room. So it looks like I'm missing the actual connector, so I might not be able to do this right away, but let me look around and see if I have one nearby here. Apparently all I'm finding is the regular USB connectors. So I may have to order an actual cable for this because I don't have one on hand. Let me just look around a little bit more, see if I have one. Well, so much for that idea. So I could tell you more about the board if I actually had a way to connect to it. I can show you how to load firmware on it, but you've already seen that before, so we'll just run through the process that would be involved. When I have a cable, I'll actually show you this. So I'm going to transition over to VS Code, and we'll figure that out in a second. But first I got to go to my desktop and set everything up. So the first thing is, right now in VS Code, I was working on something else last night. So I want to close out of this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say close editor. And that's going to bring me back to the default before I load a firmware to modify. And I'm going to go back to my desktop and show you what's going on there. So let me get it to the right place for downloads. And inside downloads, as you can see right here, I have one open. That was the one I modified. It's probably got a lot of changes in it, so I'm going to delete it and I'm going to unzip a new one. This is the most current build from last night. So I'm pulling that down right now. So this is going to take a second to actually pull down. Let me move it to the screen so you can actually see it. Sorry about that. And obviously this computer is slightly faster than the one I normally do my tutorials on, so I'm still adjusting screens so that you can actually see what I'm doing for everything. So now that that's almost pulled down, I'm going to transition back to VS Code. And inside VS Code, what I want to do is load it. So I'm going to click on the Explorer, open, and then I'm going to go to my downloads folder and click on Marlin, then select folder. Inside here, it's going to load the default environment. So inside the default environment, I'm going to click on Marlin, then source, then core, then boards. Now I'm going to search on, I believe it's, was it E3 dip? _ dip, sorry. And that'll bring us to the actual board type that we're working with. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to scroll up and see what it's working with. It says STM32. So that might be confusing. In a second, we'll see if we can figure that out. I'm going to go to configuration.h. I'm going to do a search on motherboard. And I'm going to paste it over where the ramps is. Next, I'm going to change the serial port to -1, even though we currently don't have a cable. I just wanted to show you this is the process that's probably going to be the way to do it. I can be wrong, so keep that in mind. And then the last thing is we're going to go to platformio.ini. We're going to do a search again on E3 _ dip. And it looks like it's got it right here. And so I've been working on my Python scripts for the machine, so hopefully this won't fail. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to go back to default environment, because this is normally defaulted to the ramps configuration, and paste it. To compile it or build it, you're going to click the checkbox. If we had an actual connection to it where I had a cable that fit, then I would be able to show you that. So we're just going to see if I can build it. This might fail the first time because I built other things earlier. So we might have to go to, yep, it failed. So I'm going to first click on this to clean it out. And it still may fail, but let's see what happens. So essentially I just cleaned out the previous build that I was working with last night. So the possibility of failing may be high, but we'll find out. So while that's building, I'm going to check on the chat here. So let's see what we got for questions here. The cable probably shipped with the board. I may have just opened the box and taken the cable out and put it someplace else. Right now I've been moving a lot of computer equipment around so that I could improve the actual video quality. I now have 2 screens instead of 1 so that I can see what you're talking about, so I can converse with you at the same time, watch what's going on in the actual compiler. So it looks like it's successful. One of the ways we can load firmware is actually to go to the .pio build, then go into this folder, and then we can reveal an Explorer, and I'll move over to where you can see that. Hopefully it's coming up on the desktop. So what you see here is actual chipset. You go inside there, you can see that firmware.bin is right there. That's probably what we're going to drop on the SD card or micro SD card and then place back in there, or load via the USB cable if I can ever find it. So let me go back to the actual board for a second so you can see it on the table. So all you would need to do is pop this out and then place this in some type of drive to load it. So I'll show you an example. I actually purchased one of these. I'll actually put up Amazon affiliate links later on in here, but just keep in mind that no one's actually paying me or sponsoring me to do these tutorials. And anything that you tip is greatly appreciated. But let's see if this works here. I've actually never used it for the TF drive. So I'm assuming it goes this way. You might not want to buy one of these, but that looks like the way you're supposed to do it, and then you just plug it in. So it's just, I'm new to this. I've been using it for the bigger ones because my laptop has a different connection than my desktop, so I had to get one of these to actually work with it. So let's see, what other questions we have? Okay, so on this board, are you asking if you can use the TFT display? I'm assuming yes. Obviously, I need to figure it out here real quick. So we know the TFT port is right over here. So I need to actually find out where the reset pin is so I can plug it in correctly. So let's go over and see if we can see that on the web page. So if you go over to the web page, what you can see is that in the manual, they'll actually show you up here where your TFT pins are. And so looking at the TFT pins, I'm a little confused by it because the TFT pins normally have a reset pin. So I'd be kind of wary about plugging in the display until I know what's going on with these pins. Only because I don't want to damage my board. So, granted, I'm not too worried about damaging my board, and hopefully, well, I can't power it right now, so I probably can't damage it. But they wrote reset up here, which is probably a button right there. But the actual pins, one of the ways you can figure out where these go is actually to cheat and go to the pins file for the board. So let's see if we can cheat there. So we're looking for TFT. We're looking for something that's named similar to this. So let's see if we can find that. So I'm going to bring you back over to VS Code for a second. Inside VS Code, I'm going to show you this one last thing, then I got to go move my car, unfortunately. For those that don't know, I will do a live stream tomorrow from 3 o'clock, hopefully to 5. And for those that have been tipping in the super chats, it's greatly appreciated. It's one of the ways that offsets the costs of me getting equipment to do these tutorials. So down here is pins. Now it's probably going to be in one of these folders where it says STM32. But as you can see, there's 4 of them, so we got to go through each one because I don't know where they are. So in here, I don't see the E3 dip, but I could have scrolled by it, which I probably did because it's right there. And if you look down in here, you can see what the pin layout for the board is. These are the associated pins that communicate via Marlin. So this basically defines the hardware so it knows what to move. So I'm going to do a search on TFT and hopefully we can find something. So here it's saying EXP1. So it thinks we're talking about something else. I'm not sure what they're talking about for that because that we don't have. So there's 6 references to this. So that's another type of touchscreen display. And that's another type. So I think I've gone full circle. So truth be told, I'm going to have to research where to plug it in before I power it. I mean, I know that it probably won't do any damage, but I'd rather show you the right way than the wrong way. So we'll figure that out some other time, but I will show you one last thing before I have to go move my car. And that is the configuration.h. You're probably going to have to set the second serial port for your TFT display. So that's something that I have to work out, but Normally you remove the comment and then you find out what the number is for it. And it could be anything from 0 to 7. You may have to guess because I don't know the value yet myself. But at this moment, I want to take a moment to thank you for taking the time to stop by today. And keep in mind that I'll be here between 3 and 5 tomorrow so we can talk some more. And everybody take care. And if you have some questions, remember that I have a Discord channel that's listed in the description. And you can always ask me questions or other people. I think there's upwards of 150 members in there now. So there should be plenty of information. You're welcome, guys. Take care.